Welcome to the Art of Procurement podcast with your host, Philip Eidson. Here, thought leaders share the trends, strategies, and tactics that you can use to elevate the role of procurement and your career.
Hi there, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Art of Procurement podcast. Well, it's Christmas week, so once again, as I did with Thanksgiving, I'm going to do a solo show. But first of all, I really wanted to tell you how thankful and how humbled I am that you have downloaded this show. We've been going for probably 5 or 6 weeks. This is episode number 10. And the show has already touched 40 countries, which is just incredible. And more procurement professionals are finding the show every single day. So I really can't believe how well the show has resonated. And that's what really motivates me and encourages me to keep on going and bring you more and more fantastic content from thought leaders around the procurement profession. If you're a new listener to the Art of Procurement, then you can listen to all of our past episodes, either by going to the website, which is artofprocurement.com, and you'll see a little button on the top in the menu there of episodes. That's where all of our past episodes are kept. Or alternatively, you can download them straight to your smartphone by going to iTunes, just search for Art of Procurement, or on Stitcher too. You can listen to all of our shows. They're both hosted with iTunes and with Stitcher. And before I start, I really wanted to let you know that if you want to be notified of each new episode as it comes out, and that's really the best way of finding out when we do publish content, then you can sign up for our email notification. So if you go to artofprocurement.com/subscribe, that's artofprocurement.com/subscribe, then as soon as a new episode is posted, then I'll send you an email just to let you know that it's on the site or that it's on iTunes so that you can go and download it if you haven't subscribed. Obviously, you can also go and subscribe via iTunes or Stitcher and have the show automatically downloaded to your smartphone as soon as it comes out. So I also love to hear from you. So you can email me directly at contact@artofprocurement.com. That's contact@artofprocurement.com. I'd love to hear if you have any feedback on the shows, what you are interested in terms of future episodes, and if there's any guests or thought leaders that you would recommend for me to have on the show that have experiences or perspectives that would really benefit the entire procurement community. I would really love to hear from you. So again, that's contact@artofprocurement.com. Or alternatively, I'm on Twitter at AOP Show or at P Eidson. That's PIDESON. Okay, well, without further ado then, let's go straight into the show. So as you may know, in my day job, I'm the founder and principal of a procurement advisory firm that's called Procurement. And with Procurement, I help companies use outsourcing or different as-a-service delivery models to increase the ROI of their procurement organizations. Or it may be to increase the reach of their organization or the depth and breadth of the services that they're able to offer to their internal service providers. And on the flip side, I've also been a buyer of procurement outsourcing services and a client of procurement outsourcing services. So having had the opportunity to have a seat at both sides of the table, I've really been able to observe a number of best practices that can be applied to increase the ROI of a strategic procurement program. And those best practices, those are as relevant to an outsourced program as they are to an internal program. So what I thought I would do today is just at a very high level, give an overview of 10 different best practices that I have observed from outsourcing that you can apply today to increase the ROI of your internal strategic procurement group. And before I begin, let me just say that show notes from today's episode will be at the artofprocurement.com/stakeholder. That's artofprocurement.com/stakeholder. Okay, so best practice number 1 is to have a formal statement of work and KPIs that state the services being provided, the roles and responsibilities, and minimum expected performance levels with your key stakeholder. So I've really seen both internal and outsourced programs exceed where you manage your relationship with a stakeholder as if they're an external client. So having those statement of works and KPIs in place really increase stakeholder engagement. They help promote transparency and really drive the pursuit of shared objectives. What I would say is that, when you're looking to implement something like this, start small. Don't go and try and implement this across all stakeholders at once. Maybe you go with a stakeholder who is already an advocate, but wants to drive increased engagement through his organization or her organization of procurement. Or alternatively, it could be a stakeholder who you've really struggled to build engagement with, or a stakeholder group, and you want to use this as a new approach to build a more formal process or a more formal engagement model, because this really... It goes away from it being procurement kind of going to the business saying this is how we're going to help you, and it makes it a lot more of a shared engagement, so that you're working with a stakeholder to model a statement of work that fits the requirements and the needs of both parties. The second best practice is to continuously evolve the scope and the capabilities of the services that you as a procurement organization are delivering to your client, the stakeholder group. Really to remain relevant, you have to make sure you continually improve, because you're sure that your stakeholder groups and their requirements are going to change too. Where a split often happens between procurement and stakeholder group is where the procurement group stood still and the stakeholder group evolved, and at the end of the day you end up just not providing services or being relevant to the needs of the stakeholder group, and therefore the stakeholder group goes and rather than working with you, will go and do their own thing. So it's really important that you continue to evolve, and that the value proposition that you provide for your stakeholder groups continues to be more attractive than other options that may be available to them. The third best practice, and this one probably seems simple when you say it out loud, but it's a little bit more difficult to make sure that you put into practice, is to talk the language of your executives and stakeholders, not of procurement. So, for example, your team, as from a procurement perspective, are experts in increasing the value and reducing risks associated with supply base, not cost savings. If you walk into a meeting with a lot of stakeholder groups and talk cost savings, then that's really an immediate turn-off and probably puts the walls up straight away, which makes the engagement with your stakeholders so much more difficult. The fourth best practice, and this one I think is really key, is to have a strong governance program that formally involves client executives. So having multi-level governance programs and making sure that you have participation from executives cross-functional, that really helps drive change. It helps make sure that you retain that relevancy because you have executives from your stakeholder group involved in a formal governance program who are steering the program that you have in place with them. It also helps remove roadblocks. I've really found that generates increased stakeholder buy-in because you're making it more of a shared objective rather than just a procurement program versus trying to push procurement requirements or needs or processes on the stakeholder group. And as a result, then, I've seen that has a tremendous impact and improvement on program performance. The shape that a governance program can take looks very different from company to company, but and that on its own is probably worthy of an entire episode. But needless to say that just having some kind of formal structure in place that helps drive the program, that's not red tape, really can have a material benefit on the value that procurement can bring to stakeholder executives. The fifth best practice, and this is really where a lot of value is derived from leveraging a procurement services firm, is to deliver significant value through market intelligence and through access to market intelligence. So it really is a core value driver in outsourcing because as an internal group, you often don't have access to the level of data that service providers do. But on the flip side, I often see a lot of companies who are reticent to invest in market intelligence, feeling that they can get what they need just through a market-driven RFP process, for example. I would really encourage you to look at investing in market intelligence. And when I say investing in market intelligence, it's not necessarily going to a third-party service provider who provides intelligence off the shelf, because a lot of that might not be relevant to your specific situation. But it's actually investing time in allowing your internal teams to go and find the information that they need, which will help them build and execute on the strategies they need to that cover the categories that they're responsible for. And I would actually point you in the direction to learn more about this to another Art of Procurement episode. And I'll link up to this in the show notes. I think it was episode 6 or 7, but I will link to it in the show notes. But it's with Kelly Barner. So Kelly Barner is an author of a book, or a co-author of a book on supply market intelligence. And a lot of the conversation with Kelly was not necessarily around going and where you buy supply market intelligence, but how internal teams can go and find the intelligence that they need at a much lower cost, but obviously requires an investment in time. So I would highly recommend you check out that episode, and I'll link to that in the show notes at artofprocurement.com/stakeholder. The sixth best practice is to partner with finance and the CFO to do what I call following the money. So when I talk to finance professionals or CFOs, it's clear that they don't trust what I call procurement math. So procurement math being cost savings that procurement claim to make, but that's often not actually seen at the bottom line, doesn't flow through to the bottom line. And that may not be because the savings weren't real, but it's because there wasn't an accurate way of actually tracking them. So it was hard for finance or the CFO to see where the money went. So I would really recommend you to look at tracking and reporting actual savings realized versus projected savings as an example to increase influence with finance. And where that has a double whammy is that if finance has got the ability to track your savings to the bottom line, then they'll become your number one advocate. And there's actually, you can do this using offshore teams or, there's technology solutions that you can use to help track your realized savings. And what I'll do is I'll link to 1 or 2 technology service providers that I'm aware of who offer this capability. Not an endorsement, but just something to look into as you think, well, how do I actually do that? I've got a couple of ways that you could actually look at putting in place a realized savings program. The next best practice is to use strategic roadmaps to help elevate the role of procurement. And by strategic roadmap, what I mean is plot what's important to your company in terms of what they want to achieve and the value they want to create from a procurement program, and look at where you are against the achievement of each one of those activities. You can see whether you're beginner, intermediate, advanced, and you may not want to be an advanced in all of those, but you can start plotting where you are and look at how you can actually fill the gaps to get to where you need to be able to create the value that your organization is looking for. That's also a great way of going to internal stakeholders and stakeholder executives of saying, look, we know that we don't have the capability of where we want to go to support you, but this is the plan to get there, and we need your help in getting there. Rather than a stakeholder looking at procurement saying, well, they don't do what I need and I don't know what the plan is, so I'm just not going to use them. So it's another great way of engaging with stakeholder groups and helping them play a role in the evolution of your capabilities to support them in achieving what they need to achieve by using procurement. So best practice number 8, this is, I think, really, really important. And I just don't see enough companies doing it or doing it successfully. And that's plan the marketing, communications, and onboarding at the stakeholder level. So what do I mean? Well, truly treat your stakeholder as if they're a prospect, and look at using a kind of a sales funnel or a prospect engagement process to bring them into your funnel so that you can then influence them over time and really have a strategy of how you want to engage with them. And how you go about doing it? Well, you can map your stakeholders against third-party spend, and look at the key stakeholders that you're not touching, and then build an individual strategy of how you want to start engaging with them and how you think you can create value for them over a period of 3, 6, 9, 12 months, rather than just going to them and saying, hey, I'm procurement and we need to work together. How can I help you? And to go one step further, what I've seen from companies leading the charge in this area is they actually use CRM software or customer relationship management software to really map and track the level of engagement they have with each stakeholder. And that allows the management of stakeholder relationships on a much more holistic level. The 9th best practice that I've observed from procurement service providers is really to find the one metric that matters the most and track and manage and govern against that one metric. And that metric can be different from company to company. For example, it can be cost savings, although I wouldn't recommend it. It could be spend under management. That is a metric that's often used. But you may have an organization where it's not necessarily important to have procurement engagement across all of the organization and third-party spend, but just some of it. So then you may be just tracking engagement at the stakeholder level. So which are the stakeholders that you're actually engaged with? What's your spend under management just against those 5, 10, 20 different stakeholder groups that make up the vast majority of the spend and the spend that has the most strategic importance to your company? And the 10th and final best practice for today's show is to make sure that while processes are at the foundation and a strong foundation of your procurement program, recognize that you really need to be flexible because not all projects or stakeholder requirements are the same. Those repeatable processes, they do bring consistency and discipline to the services you deliver. But your stakeholders, bear in mind, they're looking for outcomes. They're not necessarily looking for process. And procurement process is often a turn-off for stakeholders, particularly the stakeholders who are engaged in buying high spend, high complexity, high risk services or products from third-party suppliers. And if you just try and push process, then you're really going to minimize or reduce the chances you have of having a successful relationship with that stakeholder. Whereas flexibility shows that you really are a service provider. You're here to help. You're here to help them get a particular outcome. You're not here just to push them into a particular process. So those are 10 best practices that I've observed procurement services firms using really to increase the ROI of a client's investment in procurement and in strategic procurement. I know for the purposes of the show that I went over a lot of information fairly quickly, so you can find out more at the show notes, which is artofprocurement.com/stakeholder. So that brings to a close the Art of Procurement show for 2015. I hope you have a happy and healthy end of the year. And I can't wait to be back in 2016. I already have some great guests lined up, and I just can't wait to share that with you. So with that being said, thank you once again for listening, and I will talk to you next year.